Ghost Hunting in New England.
Your favorite spooky podcast. Hey guys, happy Wednesday and welcome to Ghost Hunting in New England with your host Amelia.
And Beth.
And today we're doing something so fun. So we realized, we have said for the last 2 episodes, oh, next week we'll do the drive-by ghostings. Next week we'll do the drive-by ghostings. So we were like, why not just do an entire episode of drive-by ghostings? So that's what we're here for today.
This should be super fun. We have audio files that people recorded and sent to us. We have all these sheets of paper all printed out that we're going to read some stories off of. Amelia has found some really incredibly spooky music to play while we're reading the stories. It should be great fun for everybody.
Yeah, we think this is just a fun thing. A lot of these came from paranormal investigators. Some of them just came from people sharing their own ghost story. And we even got one all the way from India, which is so exciting and cool. We're so happy.
Did you know we had people in India?
No.
I had no idea either.
Did you know we have people in Australia?
I did not know that, but we don't have a story from people in Australia, sadly, yet. They're going to send it to us.
We're going to have an Australian story next week. We were promised one, so we can't wait for that. And hello to everyone in the UK, which we found out we have a lot of listeners over there, but none of you submitted stories, so, maybe next week.
Yeah, we're always in the market for your drive-by ghosting stories. And if you were wondering if your story is the type of story for a drive-by ghosting, you're going to find out tonight what other people are submitting. So you should have a pretty good model after tonight.
Let's just say if you're wondering if it's the right type of story for a drive-by ghosting, it absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Yes, it is.
Even if it's not ghosts, even if you want to tell us about like a black-eyed child, if you want to tell us about an alien, if you want to tell us about a vampire, please feel free. We're here for all of it.
We're interested in all of those stories. Black-eyed children scare me terribly.
They're really spooky. Shadow people. Oh, please send me shadow people. Just anything weird. If you have a Bigfoot story, it's not ghosts, but whatever. We're not that serious. So
I actually emailed the guy in Texas who wrote the original story about black-eyed children, asking if we could interview him. He never got back to me.
Bummer.
I know. Maybe I'll reach out to him again.
Okay.
All right.
Let's get started. Here is our first one. Some of these are voice recordings. Some of them are Beth and I reading. And I think you all might recognize this first guest.
Hi, Amelia and Beth. It's Will with the Long Island Paranormal Investigators again. I saw you guys were looking for listener stories, so I figured I'd give you one of mine. This happened at a location on Long Island. I was investigating with that team. It's called Sheep Pasture Park. Basically, the background, in a nutshell, real quick, is there's a abandoned factory on the grounds. We believe it used to be like an aircraft building, like they built planes there. For a while we thought it was an aluminum factory, but we found out later on it had something to do with building planes. Really not much backstory on it, but now it's a park with a very long, pretty wide trail going through the middle of it with a large open field as well. And it leads all the way back to the factory. It actually goes well past there, but we don't really investigate past that too much. The night in question, we went and weren't really expecting much from this place because it's always been kind of slow there. It's nothing huge or significant ever really happened, maybe a couple EVPs or whatever. We weren't expecting much walking in this night. There was a team of about, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 of us at the time. Really, when we were walking in, one of our members, Shannon, who's a psychic, we kind of just, or really not just her, but it was all of us, we walked in and pretty much hit this one spot on the pathway where it felt like we walked into a brick wall, where it's just a wave of energy, of not necessarily negative energy. People were feeling anxious at that point. We felt like we were being watched, and we definitely didn't feel like we were alone at the time. Once we got past that point, we knew we were going to be dealing with something at that point. But we stopped, and we started to investigate on the path. So we set up a camera on the part of the pathway, and then we backed off from it, and we were watching it. And then people started seeing 2 red eyes throughout the woods. It'd be the kind of thing where you see it, and then as soon as you saw it, maybe you saw it for a second or 2, and then it would go away and it would pop up somewhere else. We were dealing with that at the same time as we were hearing things that moving in the woods, which are usually animals, but a couple of us have really bright flashlights, and if you hear something in the woods like that, you light the place up with the bright flashlight, and you can usually see whatever animal it is might look back at you, and you see the reflection in their eyes from the flashlight. But we didn't see that really on maybe once or twice, but the majority of the time we were hearing the sounds, we weren't seeing any eyes back at us, apart from the red eyes that were really as high as 12 to 14 feet in the air in the trees, which was a little ridiculous. So anyway, further down the investigation, like I said, we set that camera up on the trail, and we noticed that it kept turning off. Battery didn't die, it was just turning the camera off. It had enough memory, it had enough battery power. We really don't know why it was turning off, but we kept having it turn it back on, turn it back on. So we eventually dropped an audio recorder next to the camera, and we let both of them run at the same time just to see if we were going to pick up on anything. A little bit further down the investigation, we're still getting the same kind of activity. At that point, something changed in the atmosphere, where it was myself and the girl Shannon. We were further down the path. We were probably the two closest to the factory that we were heading towards. I started to feel my emotions changing. When I go into an investigation, I always stay open. I try to stay positive, keep my head clear. I don't let things bother me, just in general. I just started to feel very angry. I felt antagonized, and I felt like I was being provoked by something further down the path that was just happened to go toward the fact. As soon as I felt it, it was very strange to me because like I said, my emotions don't change throughout an investigation. I'm not an empath. I'm not a psychic. I don't feel those ways. I don't feel anything that changes my emotions like that. So when I noticed it, I told Shannon. I turned to her and I said, I don't know why, but I feel really angry, and I feel like whatever's down this path, I need to go charge at it. I felt the need to fight whatever was ahead of me. At the same time I was feeling that, and it was like a movie. You couldn't script it any better, where I was telling her that on the other end of the pathway, the two investigators that were closer to the camera that we set up, on the opposite end of the walkway, I'd estimate about 100 yards from me and Shannon, another investigator, Mike, who's the leader of LIPI, he just screamed at the top of his lungs, just in anger, because I later found out that he was feeling the same exact thing in the opposite direction. Once we calmed down a little bit, I was still feeling that anxious and the anger. We regrouped a little bit. The second in command of the group kind of took over because the leader, Mike, was still feeling that angry, agitated state that I was feeling. So second in command took over. He said, all right, guys, whatever's here, it feels like it's just drawing us away from each other. It's trying to pull the team apart. We need to get ourselves together. We need to leave, because we don't know what we were dealing with. Later on down the line, we've toyed with it being a demon, which I know you guys don't do demons. Later on, kind of ruled that out anyway, or possibly a jinn. But jinn are, in a nutshell, basically almost a demon from the Arabic culture. It's essentially the same thing, kind of. There's a lot to it, but I'm not going to go into that. But we think that might be what we were dealing with there, because it was kind of tricking us into pulling our team apart and separating us. On our way out, we have to pass that open field that Mike was getting agitated toward. As we were walking out, another investigator, Tom, looked out into the field as we were going out and saw something that he still doesn't talk about to this day. Whatever it was invoked a lot of fear in him, and if he felt intimidated by whatever it was out there. And whatever it was made him stop and, like in his tracks, stop and look out into the field. His head say, what is that? But at the same time that he stopped and looked out, Dimitri came up next to him and said, you see that too, right? It was pretty significant that the two of them saw it at the same time and then confirmed it with each other separately without having to say anything about it. So once we finally exited the park, Mike and I were still feeling that agitated state. Others in the group were feeling fear, a wide mix of emotions. But whatever it was that was affecting us that night, I felt it all the way until we got into the cars and left, because I remember when we exited the park that I stopped, turned around, and I actually took a few steps toward the park to go back in. And I really don't remember why or, what made me do that. I knew fully in my head that we needed to go because we don't know what we're dealing with. But I just remember the urge and the actual action of taking a few steps and wanting to go back in before Dimitri, the second in command, said, hey, what are you doing? We got back in the cars and left. So I hope that's a good story for you guys. If you have any questions about it, just let me know. I'm in contact with the podcast. So thanks for letting me share, and I'll see you guys around.
Wild.
Yes. Thanks, Will.
Thank you so much, Will.
And can we talk a little bit about jinns? I know that we don't do demons, but I had not thought about jinns in years. And I'm not talking about like the beefeater type that you order in a martini. I'm talking about the fancy Scrabble word that starts with a D.
Yes, jinns are demons. Just a different name, different religion.
Well, when I think of like, you know, the genie from Aladdin or from I Dream of Jeannie, which granted are fictional shows, and I recognize that.
Yes.
But it's like a jinn does not have the same idea behind it and the same negative connotation that a demon does.
That depends which culture you're in. Many cultures is the exact same as demon. That's what it would translate to.
However, in American culture, when we think of a genie, genies are good. They give wishes.
Right, but that's like an appropriation.
So in our culture, a genie or a jinn would be a good thing, not necessarily a demon.
Right, but that's not from the culture it came from.
But you said depending on which culture you're in, different cultures.
Right, so jinns are recognized in the Muslim tradition. They're also recognized in different parts of Asian culture too.
Okay. So he thought maybe a jinn, maybe, but that is kind of an interesting idea that there was something so frightening out there in the field that his buddy Mike doesn't talk about whatever it was he saw.
That is interesting. It's also interesting when he was talking about the feeling of needing to charge at it, he became overcome with these emotions, seemingly
aggressive
not his
feelings.
own.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. But what I like about it is the eyes.
Those red eyes that they were seeing. I don't know that I would put it that I like the eyes. I think that actually would have been terrifying, but I like the idea of the eyes.
Yes.
And that detail that he added to the story there.
Yeah.
It certainly adds.
That's an important detail.
It adds a bit of suspense to what were these eyes.
Yeah. Great story, Will. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Next story. We got a whole bunch, so we're just going to kind of fly on through.
Ghost story. Carbide and carbon building in Chicago. I thought I didn't have any memorable ghost stories aside from seeing floaters in the corners of my eyes, but I do have one strange experience that's worth recounting. In 2008, I was working as a production assistant on the Public Enemies movie, shooting mostly here in Chicago. It was a period movie, so we were always shooting in spots that still had great Art Deco looks to them. One such was the Carbide and Carbon building along Michigan Ave. Not as famous as other haunted hotels like the Drake or the Congress, it's a tall but narrow building that originally served as a regional office for the chemical company of the same name, constructed to resemble a champagne bottle. It's made out of a dark green granite with a gold top. It's currently been remodeled and is called the St. Jane Hotel. Prior, it was a Hard Rock Hotel. I'm having trouble finding records of it, but I seem to remember it was called the Hotel 21 when we were shooting there. Anyways, the crew was shooting in one of the top suites, and my job for literally the whole day was to manage the freight elevator and stop it from coming up to the set when we were rolling. Some of you may already know this trivia, but hotels back in the day did not have 13th floors. They were simply marked 12, then 14, skipping 13 because it was, quote, unlucky. Over the course of the day, I got to know a lot of the hotel staff. Sometimes they'd be stuck in the elevator with me for 10 minutes at a time as we rolled on a series of takes. Of course, at some point I asked, "Is this place haunted?" And that's when I really got them talking. I'd say about 7 out of 10 of the staff that had worked overnights claimed they had gotten calls at the front desk coming from the phone lines on the 13th floor. They would hear a little girl's voice or whispers. Some of the staff called BS on them and said that's never happened. One of the staff who was really open about talking about the occurrences, I'll call him Dan, said that they're told not to talk about it because the 13th floor had been completely abandoned for years due to a fire that had broken out on it, allegedly killing an entire family of 4. Some of the staff believes that it's the spirit of the little girl that calls the lines from it. The entire floor had been in broken disrepair and there were no plans to renovate it. Dan had told me that the staff are asked to do sweeps of it just to make sure no one gets lost on the floor or hurt because there's a lot of broken furniture and no lights. He said that they fight about who has to go up there for obvious reasons. The weirdest thing about it, he said, is that the elevator will randomly go up and stop on the 13th floor. No one having called it,